Hello, I'm Sarah Butcher, and this is Tales of the Extraordinary, the mini podcast series that is focusing on what it's like to be a woman working in the global energy industry, delving into each guest's origin story and discussing some of the highs and lows they have overcome on the way. This is our third episode, and this week I'm speaking to Dami Ladiende, a consultant process engineer at Xodus, based in London. With an outlook on life that the sky's the limit, Dami has continuously proved people wrong with her intelligence and zest for life. With a focus on getting the work-life balance right, after a hard day's work, you will often find Dami dancing in the kitchen whilst cooking up something delicious. Hello, Dami, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, Sarah, and lovely to be here, and hopefully we'll have an interesting chat.
Yeah, hopefully we will. I think it's super exciting to be speaking to you, as you are actually on maternity leave. How is it going?
It's going well. This is my third, so I hopefully know what I'm doing, but it's lovely. It's always nice to kind of step out of it and be in a different world, and the baby's great, and it's been really good.
Nice. How long have you been off now?
Coming up to 6 months. It doesn't feel like it.
I bet it's flown by.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I will jump into my first question, which is why energy?
It's probably a bit of a compromise. I didn't start out thinking about energy at all. So when I was about 8 or 9, I was going to be an astronaut. I don't know how I came up on that, but my parents were completely on board. It was as if I wanted to be an accountant. There was no questions about how you'll be challenging or anything like that. It was great. How do we do it? The only caveat they had was you had to be good. So they would get me paper clippings, books. We would do stargazing. That was the dream. And somewhere along the line, I think, secondary school, I decided I was going to be a doctor, like my dad was a dentist and a head and neck surgeon. So I knew a lot of role models, I guess. There were lots of people in my life who were doctors, neighbors, friends, and I liked it. I was enjoying it, and I was headed to that till GCSE year. And my parents thought it would be good to get us a tutor, so they found someone. It was called Mr. Muradi. He was doing a master's in mechanical engineering, so he would come after school, and my sister and I were doing sciences. We would have like tutoring, but he would have his engineering books. So while we did our work, he would do his work. And we thought we're just being nosy, to be honest. And we thought, what have you got there? And he said, oh, it's an engineering book. You can do it. This is very easy. And I think that was the hook. We thought, because it didn't sound complex. It sounded, and we're teenagers, so obviously that was a bit of a draw. And he took his books out. He showed us things that were in his book, that were in our books. He said, no, go get your physics and chemistry books. And from that moment on, we thought we wanted to do engineering. And he was really good about it. He took me on a campus visit, went to the faculty. I thought, this is exciting. And so I kind of went on chemical engineering degree. And my sister, she did electrical engineering, incidentally. And that was fine. The first couple of years, I thought I was going to end up in the food industry, because a lot of chemical engineering involves sort of food processing and things like that. So I did a 6-month internship in a brewery. I liked it, but it was very good operational job, but it was quite static for me. There wasn't a lot of project. The goal was to make the same bottle of beer every day. So you can't just go around pressing buttons and things like that. It wasn't that type of job. So I came out of that, and this was in Nigeria, by the way. I grew up in Nigeria. I went to University of Lagos. So it's big oil and gas industry there, and that's sort of a natural outlet for a lot of people. So it wasn't really the energy industry per se, it was more the oil and gas. And coming out of university, I got a job in the National Oil Company. I did a year there, and I was assigned to the gas division, which was really exciting because they were trying to move to something clean and usable. So a lot of gas flaring, so it was really exciting. I had really good managers and colleagues, and one of them sent me out to look at the flare, and I was really taken by how much emissions there were and how we could be using this. And there's a lot of power outages in Nigeria. There's a lot of sustainable power issues. And so I was really motivated by that. So I left that, did a couple of months in a French design house, came to the UK to do a master's in advanced chemical engineering at Imperial. And then I was really looking for a job in sort of the gas side of the energy industry, if you like. That experience really switched me onto gas. And so I joined BG Group, and that was a fantastic place to work. There was lots of projects and portfolios. There was all kinds of assets, and it was really fascinating. Lots of opportunities to get skills, work with different people. So that kind of got me into the industry. And then from then on, I did a bit of time moving into Shell when they took over BG, and joining Xodus, because that really sort of tied into my interest in projects and doing diverse and multiple kinds of projects. So that's sort of in a roundabout way how I've come here. So I really was going to be an astronaut, but somehow I've wound up at Xodus, which is equally amazing, I suppose.
Well, exactly, and I'm glad you said that. I mean, like NASA or Exodus, they're basically the same.
I know, tough choice, but yeah, it's the same.
So when you went into engineering, what was actually that class like? What was turning up on that first day like for you?
Well, interestingly, I went to an all-girls school, and it was one of those schools in Nigeria. It was a really good school. It was a school where a lot of the pioneering women in Nigeria went to. So we had a lot of people who were the first doctors and all kinds of lawyers, scientists. So we had lots of strong women who were role models who would come and give a talk. And because we were all girls, it was very competitive. There was no gender bias because it was an all-girls school. So I didn't notice that there would be so few women in the class. I think I'll say we were struggling to be 10% of the class, so very few out of 100 and something, maybe 10 to 15 girls. So it was a bit of a shock because I spent the last 6 years in a very strong female environment, and I've got 3 sisters and 1 brother, so it was a surprise. But actually, I think what was more surprising was the default underestimation. I think they just assumed they're the girls and we're the boys, and this is how it's going to be. But it was surprising, but it also helped me challenge myself and show up and also have really good relationships with them, because a lot of them are still some of my closest friends. So it wasn't all bad, but it was definitely, that was a bit of a paradigm shift. I didn't realize how few women would be in engineering, because I was very late interested in engineering in secondary school. I hadn't gone on to the careers days. I hadn't met many female engineers. So I hadn't thought about what it was like studying it.
And when you went from studying at university into the food industry, did you still see that there was a lack of women in engineering, or was it different?
I think there were lots of women in the companies. I think only very few women were actually in the engineering side of things. I think there was this one person I saw that was sort of on a bureau, if you like, but it was still very male dominated. There were a lot of women in the lab and sort of those type of roles, but it was still very male dominated.
And then you came across to London to go to Imperial. Why did you choose London?
I'd come here before. I wanted an international degree. I wanted something that would be fun. I wanted to meet people from around the world. Imperial had a really good reputation for sciences and for having all the equipment and things like that. So it was a mix of trying to have a really exciting study year, meet people, enjoy the city. So that was the draw to Imperial for me.
And did you enjoy London?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No, it was great. I think from being a hungry student, a lot of things I wanted to do, like, theatre and things like that, but it was good. I think there's a lot you can do even on a shoestring, so it was a really, really good year. Lots of good memories from that time.
And where were you based when you started with BG?
So I joined BG in 2008, and BG had a really fantastic international graduate program. So they had people from all the assets around the world. I think it's about 80 of us, and we started out in Reading. So I joined we had the head office in Reading. So we had a couple of weeks of an induction program. So I joined there. I worked in operations for a couple of months, and then I went out to Tunisia for about a year, and back again to the UK, and sort of different assignments, different projects, different types of roles. So I did a bit of operations, a bit of projects, a bit of maintenance, a bit of standards and compliance. So really, really broad engineering experience. It's a really fantastic time.
And what kind of made you settle in London?
I wouldn't say it was mainly following the work, to be honest. Like I said, I did a year in Tunisia when the work was in Tunisia. I did a couple of years in Aberdeen. I lived in Aberdeen for a while when the work was in Aberdeen. So it wasn't so much about being in London, because I still live in Berkshire. So it wasn't really about choosing London. It was just follow the jobs mostly.
So you talked about your mum and your dad championing you when you were a kid. Who has helped you through your career?
I think the influence of my parents, my dad especially, was really, really a feminist. I don't think he's ever said you're unable to do anything. There's nothing, we would never hear that comment out of their mouth. They would just say, how would you do it? And I think that framework really helped me going into work, that confidence, that supportive system. So I think I've got my family. My husband is really, really supportive, because doing this kind of job, you do need to have someone in your corner. You do need to manage the work-life balance, the decisions, even choosing roles, how to make it all work. But also I've had some fantastic mentors and allies and people I've met at work. Interestingly, Sarah, I've never had a female line manager, and I've worked in most of my teams have been 90% male. So without men wanting to champion women or without men wanting to teach you and show you stuff. A lot of engineering, a lot of what you need to be good at the job, sometimes someone is to show, even using software, the tips, the tricks, the techniques. So having those people who see the potential in you, even though you're different to them, has been really invaluable. I have some people that are still they become trusted advisors and really good friends. I've got my sisters who still champion me. I've got a good circle of friends, because you kind of need different people for different corners, because they're over the course of sort of the last 18 years. Sometimes what you need is someone at work who's in your corner. Sometimes you need someone at home. There's all kinds of different challenges. So I've been quite lucky to have really good family system, a really good husband. I've got really, really good stories about people I've met along the way who've all done something in their own way to really give me that support to achieve and to actually stay in an engineering career.
Yeah, because it must have been quite hard constantly coming under to that. Okay, how do I have this conversation with a male manager? Is there any examples you could give us?
I'm quite lucky not having to worry about, conversations with people, to be honest. I think maybe that's my dad's influence. So I think the challenges I've had have been things like when people underestimate you, you almost have to do a lot more to earn the basic respect. You need to prove yourself to people. And that isn't usually, it's not a 5-minute thing. It's not, Sarah, come and do this, and there you go, you're in. It could be going on for weeks. And they might not even know they're testing you, but they're kind of trying to determine if you're worthy of, that respect of as a colleague. And when you're going through that process, it can be quite insidious. It can start to get into your head about your self-confidence, your self-esteem. I've had people say things like, "Oh, but you're so young," or someone's actually asked me how old I am. I've had a potential supervisor, so I was going to join his team, and said, "How old are you?" I'd already been recommended for the job by a manager. I'd done the job, I'd shadowed, I had covered for people on holiday. It was a bit surprising. So it's almost trying to deal with people's biases or preconceptions. They've already got a picture in their mind, and they expect you to somehow help them overcome that before you can actually just do your work, which is the primary thing. Typically, if you're then the only person who's certain race, female, whatever it is, or the only person with a baby or something like that, that can be quite erosive to your self-belief. So I think that's interesting. I think that that's a big gender point for me. I think typically if you're a male or man, or they expect, if you're ready, you can say I'm ready, and people sort of let you do things. But if you're a woman, you really need to prove that you're ready. There's this burden of proof you need to take around with you. That not only slows women down, it just makes you not make the next move. So rather than just apply for a job when you think I can do some of this, you think, oh, I better make sure I can do everything so that when I'm tested, I can deliver. It's not even always a conscious thought process. It's just we become conditioned to it. Maybe from university as well, almost having to prove that you're worthy all the time. Yeah.
And would you say this bias outlook is really the biggest challenge that you have come across?
I think there are different challenges. I think a lot of the bias is very intersectional. So, for example, being a Black woman might be different to being any other race, depending on your religion, depending on how you show up, how you present, how you look. It could be your sexual orientation. So I think bias has been a strong hurdle, and it doesn't mean I've not overcome it. It just means that you have to prepare a lot harder. I've had to make sure I'm doing more just to get to the same position. And that's taking some work, and I've been quite lucky to have mentors and people who sort of coach and guide me through those years and processes and situations. But as difficult as that is, it's very difficult to call it out or call it in. If you try and raise this in the moment, it can be difficult. It's still a big D&I issue. How do you call out something without looking like you're angry or you're upset or you're not a team player or you've got? It's very difficult. It's almost dealing with someone else's conception, whatever that may be.
And what, when that comes to the fore, is there anything that you've got in your toolkit that you're like, okay, this is how I approach it?
I think fundamentally, I've tried to be competent, be good at your job, remind yourself why I remind myself why I'm in the room. My choices are valid. You have as much right as anyone else to be part of the team. I've learned to almost take a step back and look at what's going on, try and find an ally and advocate, find the best time and space to feed that back. And sometimes, just breaking down into the outcomes, what's really important here, and finding a time it's very difficult to address bias if you're on the receiving end, because typically you probably have an imbalance of power as well. So it might be the person you're reporting to, or a client, or someone you don't really have the ability to step up to. But a lot of what I've tried to do is remind myself how I've got here. worked hard to be here. I have something to contribute. I've got something of value to do, and not to also try and not make it personal. Sometimes things might not be just the way I'm reading it. Taking a step back and seeing, well, how can I get around this? What's the best way? What's really important? And also having those trusted advisors and saying, well, what would you do if you're in the situation, or how can I navigate this? So it's a mixture of things.
Absolutely. And do you think your experiences are what really influenced you to take the DEI role that you did at Xodus?
I think DEI role that was a step out. It's not something that I would say I was sort of crusading towards or anything like that. But I think at the time Xodus was starting to look at DEI, we were really looking at starting from a gender point of view. We didn't really have a lot of conversations about things like this. And we're very much, the energy industry is still pretty male dominated. We have the gender pay gap. We didn't really talk about things like race or LGBTQ or neurodiversity or inclusion. So we didn't have these conversations. And obviously I have my lived experiences, but at the same time, it's quite easy to be on the side of, oh, this is wrong and that's happened. But I took the D&I role mainly because I wanted to be on the side of contributing, the side of change. So I wanted to be kind of helping to solve it rather than sitting on the sidelines and saying, I don't like this and I don't like that, or something. Whatever I can do to contribute to moving that along. And I don't have every single lived experience, absolutely not. But I also want to make sure that whatever way I can be part of the solution, I did that. So that sort of motivated me. A lot of lived experiences, but at the same time, also wanting to be on the side of change and on the side of contributing.
What do you think in that role, did you see change starting to happen, or was there a key pivotal moment when you were in that position?
I think at the core of it, we're dealing with people's behaviors and people's perceptions. And also we're all adults in the workplace. So we've become ourselves some very, through very life journeys. And at the end of it, you're trying to get behavior change, and you want people to ultimately understand something that they might not experience. So have the empathy or the listening to someone else's situation, and ultimately tuning their own behavior to make that a little bit easier for someone else. There's a lot that still needs to happen. There's still lots of glass ceilings for different attributes. It's still quite difficult. It's not as easy. So it's easy for me to speak up now. I've got sort of 18 years, but maybe, if you'd asked me this in year 1 or 2 in my career, I might have been going through not that happy to be open about things. So calling things out is still very difficult. If someone has an experience, if even at the low team level, how do you report it? How do you have a positive relationship if something has happened? People are worried about saying the wrong thing. People are worried about what happens if I say something that I'm unhappy about something. It's still difficult to navigate. I think intersectionality is still a big issue. So there's still people who are, just because someone's a woman, not all women are the same. Everyone is different. Everybody's unique. So it's hard to, you can't just say, well, this works for everybody. There'll be someone who has a different experience, and trying to take all of that in. And I still think there's not enough women in leadership. There's still, if you went on any companies, about us leaders page, there's still not enough women, still not enough people who are ethnically diverse, from different mix of people. I think there's still a lot to do. And particularly if we're talking about women, I still see the women falling off different cliffs. There's a lot of cliffhangers for women. Not everyone will have a family. That's not always the thing. It might just be dealing with the behaviors, the cultures in different teams and organizations and locations that really excludes people. So there's still a lot to do in the D&I space. What I've been most pleased to see is people are having these conversations. We're talking about things like menopause that will have been very awkward to talk about in a workplace, where at least there's somewhere to talk about it, and they're starting to have that awareness that you need someone to show up and be able to share the things that makes themselves at work. And I'll give you a simple example, Sarah. I said I grew up in Nigeria, and a lot of that is the energy industry is very nascent. There's a lot of opportunity to understand the problems, to bring solutions. And if I don't talk about that at work, and I come and work in a company like Xodus, you're missing out on all that insight. I've lived in that economy. I understand a bit about it. I know how it feels to live without sort of power and security. So if I come to work and I do not talk about that, even if you had a project that was interfacing with that, you'd be losing out all that technical advantage, all that insight. So I still think that D&I isn't just about, people's feelings. There's a big business side to it. There's the connection you need to do good work, for people to do their best work, their psychological safety in being able to speak up and not be worried about how that will be received, and being able to tap into people's language skills, people's cultural skills. And so I think it's a lot of opportunities. So on one side, there's a lot of things to overcome, but once you can unlock that, there's so much that businesses and teams can take out of it.
Can you think about a time where you really do believe that you were overlooked either for a promotion or for a job opportunity or a project?
Oh, I'm sure there's loads of that. So I think someone's going to ask me, why do I work? And I think for me, there's a couple of reasons why I would work. And the first one is self-actualization. You come to work because you really want to do good work. You want to, all the stuff that's motivating. You want to be part of the great projects. And what I tend to see, sometimes people say, so if you had a role, you would start with, why can't Dami do this job? Oh, she lives there, or she's got children, or she can't travel. You're almost starting from why I can't do it versus, what can she bring to the job? So if you're starting from a deductive mindset of, this is the perfect candidate and this person is this and that, so therefore you're taking away things versus saying, this person can use this software, they can speak this language, they've been on this project, they can do this type of calculations. If you're starting from an additive point of view, you get more people in. I think even well-meaning bias, when they said, you've got a baby, so this might be stressful, or they don't even ask you, they make these decisions for you, or they don't include you in the conversation. So, and I think the other thing I've also experienced is when companies reorganize, very often, I think women can be disproportionately affected. So it could be, we're cutting down the team, we're relocating. So, can you move here? Obviously, maybe I can't if I've got children in school or nursery. If you can't move, you're not as mobile as the job or the company would like you to be. You can quickly find yourself not advancing, not moving forward. Or if there's one role and there's two people will start with that deductive mindset. And, there's all this, so there's been so many, it's not just getting a job in the company, there's also getting, as you know, in Xodus, a lot of it is joining projects. So there's a constant high selection that has to happen. So, and the minute you don't get on those projects, you start to get an attainment gap, an experience gap, because if you miss out on the cost, say, for example, we're really on the cusp of the energy transition, there's lots of projects, lots of new ways of thinking, lots of innovation in that space. And if you don't get on those projects, if you don't get on those teams, you start to get an experience gap, which then leads to a pay gap. So I could say I've had those experiences myself, and it's very difficult to call out. Going back to how do you deal with it, you can't suddenly go and say, well, why haven't you put me on a project? I have done that in the past. And I've had some managers who've been able to take on that feedback and say, okay, right, so I thought you might not want to do it, or I thought it might be difficult. Next time I'll do this, I'll ask you. And I've had people who've just said, I made that decision, and that's how it is. So I think it's getting better, but it might just be that I'm also getting more senior, so I'm able to advocate for myself a bit better.
Yeah, and so draining as well, keep having to pick yourself up and move forwards.
Yeah.
So we'll go from challenges to successes. What do you think your biggest success to date has been?
So I don't know. I'm not. I think I'm very much on the journey. I'm not stopping to sort of count any victories just yet. I think I'm happy that I'm able to sort of carry on working. I'm enjoying being part of the energy industry. I've had the opportunity to do different things. So even being able to switch into different types of roles. So going into the D&I role has also been quite an experience as well. So I'm not really stopping to take stock, but I'm just, keep going. There's still a lot to do and still pressing forward.
Is there anything, do you have anything that you'd like to do? Is there anything in that bucket list to achieve?
I think there's loads. I think I'm still very keen on doing lots of energy strategy stuff. I think a lot of the solutions I see are very much driven around more developed societies, more developed infrastructure landscapes. I'm still very passionate about sustainable development goals and how we get, because there's so much. Energy has such a big link to a lot of the SDGs, to people's health, to well-being, to access to education, to women, to just powering industries, and that's still a big passion of mine. So I think I'll very much like to contribute to that. I think there's still too many people who have energy insecurity, and that should just be a basic. It's so key to a lot of what we're trying to do on sustainability. So that's still something I'm passionate about.
We'll watch this space. I'll book you in for 25 years' time, and we'll see. We'll have the same.
Hopefully not that long. Hopefully sooner than that.
My final question is, if you were to give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
It would be, you deserve your space in the room. You will experience all kinds of things. There'll be really, really good people. There'll be mentors, allies. There'll be lots of opportunity to learn, to explore, to develop. And there'll also be, there are still people who might not behave as you might wish them to be. There'll be biases. There'll be challenges to overcome, but challenges are not barriers. They're things to get over. Do not internalize other people's negativity. Try and stay positive. Keep that mindset. And yeah, the world's your oyster.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dami, for that. I think it's that challenge is not a barrier, and don't take other people's thoughts and carry them with you. Let them go. Absolutely. You're your own person, and you know your gut, and you know your path. So thank you very much. I will let you go back to your baby, and hopefully I'll get to catch up with you soon.
You too. Thanks, Sarah.
That's it for our penultimate Tales of the Extraordinary in this mini-series. All previous episodes are available via our website and social media channels, and the final episode drops on Wednesday. Until next time, take care.
Tales of the Extraordinary is brought to you by the Xodus Empowering the Energy Industry team and produced by the Big Partnership.